Welcome to our NPTEL MOOC module on health economics. We are continuing with the week on health equity or equity and health. We have been discussing the different conceptions of distribution or redistribution. We have started discussing in the previous lecture on different type of distinguishing equality and equity and different type of equity as well, horizontal and vertical equity, etc. So, in this lecture we are going to discuss the theories of redistribution, hence it is called equity and redistribution. So, largely we will be actually emphasizing on the reasons for redistribution or distribution, and we will be discussing on the most important three theories, that is called utilitarian, then egalitarian and Rawlsian. So, to introduce you once again about the distribution, and hence it has value of efficiency. The people are mostly concerned with the fairness of the distribution, hence redistribution really matters. Referring to the work of Hosman and Person, Macpherson in their writing, so they discuss about notions of fairness, opportunity, freedom and rights. And since these are considered to be largely useful directly or indirectly in policy making, hence it has value for the society. So, considering the issue of equity and redistribution, though there have been some papers, however, the discussion still requires attention, because the clarity is still somewhere not addressed in detail, especially in the context of health economics, and hence health economists and their explanation for equity requires further importance. So, why does redistribution take place? Yes, it is quite understood that redistribution may be from the socio-political strategies, or maybe from the context of political economy explanation, and it reflects since about society, about justice, about people. So, hence different clarifications are given by Marxist and the libertarians. So, in that case especially for the libertarians case, all redistribution other than the individual their contribution as voluntary donations are considered to be coerced. Okay. And since in the reach, the person since the reach forced through the political process and the ballot box to redistribute some of their income to the poor, who hold the political power due to the tyranny of the majority. Whereas, in case of Marxian thought, you will see this redistribution is considered to be an insurance for the ruling capitalist. They will reduce the probability of revolution by by bribing the working class with such a thing as a minimum income or pensions and access to education and healthcare. This is how it is defined from two school of thought. The third thought is on how people care about their fellow citizens. Okay, it is not just the distribution confining to the capitalist or confining to the elite one who are capturing the power. It is rather connecting to how people actually care about the fellow citizens. Suppose within a two person economy, we have rich and poor. R stands for the rich and poor, P stands for the poor. Redistribution involves R giving away some of their income to P, and hence it is as a delta income of the R added as delta income to the poor. So, voluntary redistribution will continue until R's gain in marginal utility from that is P, increased income is equal. Basically, so long as their marginal utilities are actually equivalent, then till that the contribution or the redistribution should continue. And not just the marginal utilities of though both the rich and poor are equal, it also equivalent to their marginal utility of loss from his own reduced income. So, theory of redistributive justice has three theories. I mean, so far as theories related to redistributive justice is concerned, it has three theories, and which define the fairness of allocation of health resources. Starting with utilitarianism theory, it's concerning with individual welfare in terms of utility or happiness. Mentioned initial work of we refer to the author Bentham for the contribution during 1748 to 1832, and J. Mill from 1806 to 1873. So, Bentham work is based on simple premise that people do things to attain pleasure and to avoid pain. This is measured cardinally as a number of utils and used to make interpersonal comparisons. And this provides information about how people are happy and specific to the person, and it is indeed neutral about the sources of pleasure and pain. All right. So, whereas the utilitarian models rely on individual subjective assessment their own utility, and hence it is attached with the crucial distributional challenges. So, how many utils one individual can forgive or can generate from the consumption of an additional unit of consumption or good compared to how many utils another individual can generate from the same unit, that is largely subjective. Hence, the aggregate utility across individuals according to unweighted sum ranking rule looks only at the sum total of utilities justified by greatest happiness principle. So, we are referring to the work of Mill again on the context of utilitarian models. This distinguishes between higher and lower pleasure, and claims that it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. And as per the quotation of J. Mill, mentioned that it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. Basically argues that no reasonable person would ever want to be a dog or a pig just for the sake of being more comfortable. Yes, being human can sometimes cause stress that animals or fools don't have to deal with. So, but Mill totally cannot imagine someone wanting to give up their human brain just for the comfort of human life. So, in this in accordance with this view, society should be gaining pleasures, and in accordance with them being a higher or a lower order can be placed based on their weight. So, this is even weight sum ranking rule, etc. we already discussed from the works of Bentham. So, we need to note that in healthcare particularly, we need to modify or there are versions presented as modified and simplified version of the maximizing health conditions. Rather than utility or happiness, health is maximum. The utilitarian approach gives the view of greatest happiness principle, that is translated to greatest health or the total health principle. So, Bentham was in favor of radical distribution because of his contribution during the radical change time period of British, ranging in the 18th century period of Britain. Then some other details related to radical measurement, etc., as mentioned by Bentham, etc. I am just going to mention that individual differences in relative strength of preferences of health are disregarded by assigning the same finite aid point, that may be 0 to 1 on the cardinal health scale. So, the third this is in fact one point, and the second you can see it is the utilitarian concept considered to be a widely accepted method, since it gives cardinal indications. Third one is related to normative judgment. Some of the views are based on the maximum norms. Okay, and the health gains are from the normative judgment that a given health gain is assigned the same social value irrespective of the characteristics of the patients involved. So, even the teeniest gain in total sum would be taken to outweigh distributional inequalities of the most blatant kind. Second one is called egalitarian approach, where the meaning is considered to be equalizing, and so often used as the distribundum is the, I mean, this is general egalitarianism. Whenever we refer, this is often used when the distribundum is income or wealth. Specific egalitarianism refers to an equal distribution of a particular good, and strong egalitarianism refers to, I mean, this distinguishes from the egalitarianism of maximin that allows for inequalities so long as they benefit the host of. So, you can read the example like we have referred, like strong egalitarians would prefer an equal split of 50 units of utility to each of two individuals in a situation where one individual had 80 and the other one is 51. So, egalitarian would prefer to split it to 50. This is because the latter situation, that is the unequal case of 80 against 51, then the former egalitarian approach of 50 by 50, even though the host of individuals would benefit from having 51 rather than 50. So, in healthcare context, when the distribundum is no longer income but health, strong egalitarianism is concerned, and but usually absurd in policy context. It suggests that a situation in which two individuals are in an equally bad state of health is considered as better than situation which only one in that state and the other fit healthy. So, similarly you can see which we just said, the maximin one is emerging as the more sensible rule than the strong egalitarianism principle. So, maximin refers to the works of John Rawls from the year 1921 to 2002. It is on theory of justice, which states that egalitarian at the outset, but accept inequality as long as it is not possible to further the improvement of the worst of. Rawls in 1971 held that social and economic inequalities must be to the greatest benefit of the least advantaged. Okay, so this is what you can also follow from our later chapters. We also discuss about Rawlsian theory. This the least which says the greatest benefit of the least advantaged. This refers to the difference principle. Maximin is a lexicographic principle that basically in alternative arrangements are compared from the best to the least advantaged one. If they are equally or badly off, attention switches to the second least advantaged and so on. So, here are the Rawls individual well-being in terms of the index of primary goods consisting of some 5 different indicators like basic liberties such as freedom of thought, freedom of choice of occupation, powers and prerogatives, income, wealth and social basis of self-respect, etc. Rawls even very less clarification on how items in the index are to be weighted. So, weights were not mentioned. So, even offers little guidance about the primary goods and their trade off against each other, especially in the construction of index. So, Rawls theory applies only to individuals who are normal, active and fully cooperating members of the society, and so normal Daniels views that there is no distributive theory for healthcare because no one is sick. If you see, applying the max min principle to health, the futile goal of eliminating or leavening all natural differences between persons as mentioned in Daniels, and believe that there is no sick in reality. So, the Maximin principle owes much to the work of Rawls, and similarly other details we have given and example we have just cited for your reference. You can just read the meaning and interpretations in the context of illness or the severity of illness. The even we mentioned that the lexicographic nature of this principle means that the resources would be devoted to the most severely ill individual and one with the shortest expected remaining life. So, hence the minimum most ladder whoever is there, the utility function is used to be defined with the mean of the two okay choices. So, the differences between the three theories of justice, if we just compare, here we are presenting through different indicators. So far as when the health life expectancies are concerned, in the utilitarian theory or in the egalitarian theory, in Rawlsian theory, you will see, especially we have given their life expectancy in years for different context. So, where in the first question, where is the average healthy life expectancy highest? When average life expectancy highest is concerned, we are actually referring to the utilitarian one. You can just see out of these three comparisons. So, if the average is 73.5 and then even average is highest in this case, hence it is preferred. Similarly, where is the distribution of health most equal, that is the context of egalitarian. In that case, if you see the most equal is in the case of 70 to 70 years life expectancy. If the range is there, then that is preferred. And the last one is the health of the worst of best, that is the 71, the best one 71, and that is the Rawlsian principle. So, I think I have already mentioned utilitarians offer you because this is where the total health is the highest. Egalitarian offer E because it has the most equal distribution of health, whereas Rawlsian offer because it is the best for the worst of cases, that is worst we say the different life expectancies, and among them actually the best one is 71. Okay. So, depending on the questions, the choice of the theories can be marked correctly. The health frontier and the trade-off where the equity principle is hidden, there is trade-off between theories that can be analyzed in terms of social welfare functions, especially the health frontier cases. There are three key assumptions in the health frontier approach, especially when we map its budget to that of the product, the maximization in terms of healthcare productivity. We are taking the case of A and B between two group of patients. Okay, and so the assumptions are considered to be valid, that a total fixed or the fixed total healthcare budget is to be distributed between these two patients A and B, and the probability of healthcare on health is positive and the marginal probability is diminishing as per our standard production possibility frontier approach. Health outcomes are measurable on a cardinal scale, either may be quali and are interpersonally comparable. So, if the health production we are just presenting here, that if the health production function were similar, the frontier would be symmetric around 45 degrees, which we have just mentioned. This indicates equality of the distribution between A and B. health maximizing allocation has identical with the egalitarian, it is identical with the egalitarian approach as well as the max-min solutions. And if the health maximization were the only policy objective, then this point becomes efficient allocation. Okay. So, and given the budget etc. and constant, I think the maximum possibilities we have also trapped, we will mention. So, but by the egalitarian approach, if it is 45-degree line is actually defining the best one. Okay. So, the shape of the frontier is concave and includes Pareto efficient distribution only, that is basically Pareto efficiency, where we say that improving the health of one group would imply a reduction in other group, hence there is a trade off. So, frontier is concave due to, you can just read it between the lines, I am not explaining much. Due to these, the max mean and equality yield the same solution. Okay, because we are attaining the max mean possibility and the equality, because both are getting the equal share. Given the efficiency constant, I think we are attending in another point. For distinguishing the max mean from the egalitarian point, we have to include an increasing part as well. For that, at least one of the above assumption has to be relaxed, then only the frontier has to be different, then only you can differentiate the max mean as against equality. If it is the case, then we will have an upward sloping section from the vertical axis to R, okay, and then there will be diminishing portions. The treatment of A, if I just map it on this diagram, you can see the production possibility frontier or the utility frontier is actually following increasing then decreasing till their death, entire life. So, since it is 45-degree line, we can confirm very clearly that we are attaining the egalitarian approach here, whereas the max mean reaches at R, and so far as the maximum sum the efficiency is constant, we are actually reaching at point U given the budget constant. Okay, so this theory of justice E etc. E involves equal health, R explain max mean, and U is in fact called the maximum, U point is maximum total health, that is possibly even called the efficient most point. So, Pareto selection is that if we are actually moving for R to U. Okay. So, as mentioned by Elster in 1992, basically this suggests that we have a common sense conception of justice. So, we still reach at the maximum utilization point to the maximum health. Okay. If this is the range where if it is emphasized correctly, we are actually having Pareto efficiency section. If equality per se is part of the health policy objective, then another one, that is from here to here, E to R, this portion. Okay, E to R is relevant. So, in terms of social welfare function for health, of course, there is trade off, and this usually include level of utility of each of the two individuals, and in short it is referred to as SWF, and sometimes it is also mentioned HRSWF. So, SWF assumes a constant elasticity of substitutions, which means that the curvature of the ISO welfare curve is constant. So, we can present in an equation about social welfare function. W stands for the overall social welfare, HA and B stands for the health of the person A and B, and alpha is the respective weight for the individual relative to other, and R is more important, measures the degree of aversions to inequality, and then based on the level of R, the properties of convexity is determined, and hence the ISO welfare curve is presented. If both individuals are considered to have equal weight, then alpha of course equal to half, and it will be symmetric around that 45-degree line which I have already mentioned. If the parameter R measures the strength of equity, equity preferences which I just said, R is very important. Okay. And this shows how close to the equity point R from the preferred location line. If R equal to -1, that means the social welfare equal to the sum of the individual welfare. You can check with this. If it is -1, then the sum of individual utility will be equal. So, in that case no aversion to inequality. This utilitarian type of social welfare function results in iso welfare curves, that is individual welfare curve, and that are parallel straight lines with a gradient of minus alpha upon 1 minus alpha. So, when alpha equal to then half 50 equality is defined, in that case then the gradient is of course -1. Social welfare, this is what we say as iso individual welfare curve. Social welfare is maximized simply by summing their individual health. If R is greater than -1, then the greater the inequalities between A and B, the greater is the weight between these two, and especially the worse of individuals relative to that of the better one. This result in iso welfare curve that are convex to the origin. Whereas in the other case it is concave. I will just come to it. In this case, when it is R is greater than -1, in the extreme the worst of individual is all that matters, and R takes the value of infinity. This will result in a Rawlsian type of social welfare function with L-shaped function, L-shaped preference function, or L-shaped iso welfare curve. This is what is presented in this diagram. Okay. And hence the higher the parameter value of R, the stronger is the equity preferences, and the closer one gets to the equity point, and which is also the Rawlsian point R. You can just see. Okay. And further away from the utilitarian point U. So, we have discussed the distributive justice issues concerning these three point of view. Also discussed the health possibility frontier and these three approaches of the redistribution, all of which are equally good according to Pareto criteria. So, these points are U, which you already mentioned. U basically the point where sum of ranking solution suggested by the utilitarian, and R is the point referring to the Rawlsian maximum solution, and W is basically the social welfare trade-off solution, okay, which makes trade-off between the arguments of the former to the solutions. The actual location of this third point critically depends on the degree of aversion to the inequality. The point is at which the iso welfare curve is tangential to the health frontier represents the optimal distribution of health gains across two patients, which already mentioned the tangential point. Okay. And so, I think so we can take off the opportunity cost etc. to the next class. These are all there. I will clarify through, or hardly I can take another 1 minute to clarify. So, yes, these three approaches which I already discussed can be also explained right now through this example. We have A and B, and their healthcare budget is presented here. So, A maximum in the first case you can see A maximum, and in the second case it is the equality 6 and 6 are equal. Third is not clearly understood, and in the fifth and sixth case you get the maximum possibilities, and okay, and hence we can define our final answer to the principle or the redistributive theories which is applied. In the second case, we have highlighted it is called egalitarian principle or the Rawlsian principle, and whereas the fifth and sixth one is precisely called the health maximum utilization or utility maximization principle or the theory. So, while allocation of V and Vi both involve maximum total health, that is 18, the last column shows the opportunity cost in terms of benefits foregone to B for each additional unit of health gain for A. So, which allocation is preferred, whether it is egalitarian one? If an egalitarian principle is followed, then option 2 we have already said, and if it is health maximizing utilitarian principle is concerned, then it is B or Vi. Okay. So, or there might be might wish to make a trade off between these two corner principles. In so doing, it might look at the final column and be confronted with the price of equity. Okay, so that is basically the benefits foregone to B for one more unit of A, the opportunity cost. So we'll hence discuss these are the in our next model on next unit on about new economic paradigm for the equity, and also we will emphasize on equity in health financing and their distribution. So, these are your suggested reading. With this I hope you will get further details from the next class. Thank you.